This is The Art of Startup War, and I am your sensei, Brian McMahon. Now, in Season 1 and 2, I got inside the minds of startup investors. In Season 3, I brought in entrepreneurs to share their startup journey. Here, in Season 4, we combine both, so you can hear investors critique the investment value proposition of individual companies. You're going to hear how investors make decisions to invest in startups, what makes a great entrepreneur, and how billion-dollar companies are built. So tune in every Tuesday, 10 a.m. on all the major platforms. You can empower your tribe by sharing the podcast, and remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave us a comment. Good morning, it's Brian. It's The Art of Startup War. I am here with a phenomenal company that we have managed to get into our international accelerator. We found these guys. We couldn't give them money fast enough. We are so fortunate that we are invested in them. And it's one of those companies, a lot of the times you look at a product and say, I love this product, it's going to be incredible, or it is already incredible, or it works. But sometimes you look at people and you know for a fact that the people are going to have a unicorn. Now, you don't know whether it's going to be this one, the next one, or the one after, but a 1 in 3 chance I will take any second because you know the people are. And the two guys I'm here in this podcast studio with are exactly that. I bought you both way before the actual initial MVP or product that you were putting together because A, I knew what was going to be built, and B, I know that you're so brilliant in what you do that it's going to happen and you're going to bring tremendous change to the world. And I mean that like from the bottom of my heart. And so I want to introduce Yuval, and I also want to introduce Cfir, two phenomenal founders who have created a company which is called Urbanico. And Urbanico is focused on taking all of the data in the world, which is kind of everything, and bringing it into one place, and starting with public companies so that it's available to private companies. But I see it being everything everywhere. Is that fair?
So, first of all, thank you for the introduction. It's super cool to be here in Santa Monica and super
in the fridge.
Yeah, in the fridge.
It's actually super
this
warm.
This fridge is such an amazing place, and like you just said, all the bullshit stays out of the fridge. So yeah, thanks for having us. I think you described it pretty well. So obviously, the vision that we're trying to create is building a platform that will help companies that work in cities to be better data driven, or to use data in a better way in order to make smarter decisions and to improve both their business and their products and services to their customers.
And I think you're actually being kind. You're being kind when you say that companies can use it in a smarter way. In reality, the majority of companies don't do it in any kind of way, right? Most of the decisions are made in such an isolation of a proper decision-making process that it's criminal.
Yeah, it's such a interesting thing to see that even the greatest companies, the most successful companies, are basing their decision on, just the personal things that their executives have in their mind, or the personal experiences that they had. But then using data, which is abundant today, is something that people are not taking advantage of. And the fact that there's so much data that is out there, especially in the urban area, which, obviously nowadays consists more than 50% of the population on planet Earth,
right,
gives this tremendous opportunity to actually improve the way that we're doing business, the way that we're providing services, products, and basically the way we live all over the place.
And it's super interesting because data 30 years ago, to your point, there was just a few things you could get. You could get the population, maybe you can get like the age of the population, maybe you get some salaries and bits and pieces. But now, if you follow the data, you can pretty much track every single step that I take from when I leave this office to go home to come back. You can tell what I've eaten, how I eat it, where I eat it. You can tell when I'm passing by certain places. Like, you can look at a living, breathing organism, which is the entire data of what makes a city breathe, right?
So you're completely right. And I think that this trend of the amount of data that has been created and will be created is exponentially growing. So especially when we're looking at cities, the deployment of IoT devices all across the value chain of the city creates this huge amount of opportunity that is just scaling exponentially as we grow. I think that an important message to tell is that, sometimes it can sound to people like, we're tracking individual persons or people that are walking around the city. But most of the data that municipalities and cities, and most of the data of the urban space as a whole, is actually public by definition. So, when we're talking about data that comes from IoT devices, let's check, waste management sensors or weather sensors or traffic sensors, whatever, the grand majority of the data is public, and thus it's not that we're tracking a certain person from point A to point B, but we're allowing those companies, the users of the data, to actually have this aggregated view to make those much more informed decisions.
Yeah, but it's public, but it's really, really
Granular,
hard
yeah.
to get, right? This is what makes it brilliant. So whenever I'm looking at founders, and it doesn't matter if it's me and my team or companies that we invest in or just people that I really admire and I see, I always wonder, like, where do the skill gaps fill in? And sometimes, like, I was a solo founder of this, and I knew that I had lots of gaps and skills to fill, and I thought, okay, I got to fill them going forward. But that's a risk factor in a company. What you've done incredibly well is Yuval, formed for me that really strong executor as a business development leader that sees the company, sees the strategy of where you go forward. And then Cfir sits beside you. He's almost like the Zen-like monk that sits. He sits on top of the mountain. That sits on top of the mountain, and you just have this aura that comes from it. And as you walk close to the mountain, you can feel the brilliance that comes through because it's your data science background. I don't even think we can say 10% of the places that you've been and the things that you've done that have given you the experience that you've had. But suffice it to say, just on this podcast, it's extreme to say the least. So your knowledge of how to do what very few other people can do, which is to take that data and then turn it into an intelligible force that can help people make decisions, is a huge part of the key to the team working together, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, tell us how you see data, Cfir, and tell us where you see this going in the future. Like, how huge can this be, and how simple can this be?
So I think it's a very interesting process. I mean, urban data, it's all around us, from the Uber ride that we take home to the police patrol that guarding a neighborhood to the nearest Starbucks. It's everywhere. And I think this trend of smart cities is just growing and growing, and started from a little bit a different initiative. And now we see how much cities all over the world, especially in the US, trying to bring innovation into their cities and and understanding how valuable is data.
And then where do you see that going? So, because you're right, the name smart cities is a little bit like calling this Silicon Beach or London like Silicon Roundabout or whatever. They're names. They were names that were trendy that came in. And I think a lot of local governments said, we're going to call ourselves a smart city. And then just after the meeting, they'd say to the guy next to them, what's a smart city? And now we're really seeing that the city itself, the data within the city, becomes more powerful than the decisions that are made by the people themselves. How far do you see this going, and how comfortable are the local city authorities with releasing this data out?
So I think with almost all the data, which is public by definition, there's no reason for them to not be comfortable. Actually, it started from a place of be transparent and show the citizens almost every data that the city collect. The thing is that we understood that citizens are not able to create real value from this data. They have no capacity to really process it. And the one that can really continue to create value to those citizens are the companies that create innovation, that create amazing products, amazing technologies. And we want to be this connector that remove the barrier of using data, which have potential to change our life in almost every vertical. We want to bring this data to those companies and help them grow and really change the world.
I really see you in a similar vein to Google when Google first started. And what Google said was, hey, why don't we just make it easier for you to find stuff? I can hardly even remember back in the day when, I would try and find a flower shop or something, and, it was in the very early days of Google, and or maybe even before Google, where you'd look in a book, or I even remember, I sound old now, but I even remember when I'd be in a car with a map, right? A map. piece of paper, which was totally cool to drive with. Like everybody's fine. And we had these huge big maps, which we would unfold and say, oh, I think we take a left now.
Yeah, and then
like,
you had to turn the map around.
You had to move your steering wheel.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. So Google transformed everybody's life in what was a moment, really. And they transformed it in such a way that today we can't even imagine finding something or making a decision without consulting with a search engine, whether it's Google or whether it's anything else, really. And data for me is that opportunity where before we made decisions in isolation, whether it's a company making a decision where we didn't fully understand the friction of that decision. Like we say, hey, let's move to Santa Monica, but we don't understand the traffic patterns in Santa Monica, and we suddenly hire 200 people. And like, for a great example is take the Apple store here locally. One person in the Santa Monica Apple store actually lives in Santa Monica. So every single person is traveling in from multiple distances, and I guarantee you their choice of how many people to have, what the logistic capabilities of the store were, where to hire, how much to pay, had no basis on data whatsoever. I guarantee you they just said, dude, we need to be in Santa Monica, and how many people should we hire? I don't know, like how big is the store? Cool. 200 people, stick an ad on Craigslist and an ad on LinkedIn. But I think we're going to move to a place in whether it's a year or 2 years or 5 years or 15 years, where every single decision will be made with a principle basis of logical data, almost in a way that in the same way today we use Google without even really thinking we're doing something out of the ordinary.
So I think, first of all, it's a really interesting comparison. I mean, I don't want to be like, sound arrogant or, two founders that are comparing themselves to Google. It's always something that, we have to keep our feet on the ground. But I think it's a super interesting comparison because essentially what Google did was taking this huge mess in the early days of the internet and putting it into an order, into a standard for people to be able to find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we're trying to do with data. The volume of data is crazy vast. So like, it's just like Fear mentioned, it's all over the place and touches every aspect of living. And just expanding your example of the Apple store here in Santa Monica, think about the implication when you're talking about the new headquarters for Amazon. When Amazon wants to hire 10,000 people in different location or launching or just launching their headquarters in Europe, think about the amount of the value that data can bring them in terms of hiring people, the location of their headquarters, in terms of restaurants around them. Think about the implication of what's the impact of bringing a company like Amazon to open a headquarter in one location or another. So I think it's really, really interesting to think about those implications, which are not a kind of, the first or direct outcomes that pops into your mind instantly when you're thinking about urban data.
Yeah, and the problem is actually us, because we're so arrogant in our decision making that we feel, okay, cool, we've got 4 locations, we choose this location, but the ability to be able to look at something absolutely logically based on having access to every single part of the decision-making process is a minimum that we should have on any level. Yeah. And it's so huge for everybody, including the city. And I know that you were approached by one of the scooter companies that talked about the fact of why is everything in a city static? Like, why are, let's say, the Hulu bikes in Santa Monica, why are they static Hulu bikes in the same place all the time when the city is a living, moving organism? Why do we have that we just follow what's happening between the different providers in the place? Like, if we already have the data, if we already know where the people are picking up the scooters or the electric bikes, where they're dropping them off, how long they are there for, if we already know when certain holidays are going to be, if we already know a lot of the data that's already in the city, then why would we not move the city resources as easily as we can actually move the scooters? Like, if we suddenly know that the crosswalks, that there's a bunch of people who are dropping their scooters right down the road there in Wiltshire, and we've no crosswalk there, and suddenly thousands of people are moving there, well, the city resources that are required for the movement of people into that space should move just as easily. And that's when a city becomes real smart. It's not about, yeah, I got the data. Yeah, we actually got some really smart people to take that data apart and come up with some good decisions. But actually, our city follows what the data tells us is best for the city and best for the companies. Because, by the way, and this is my last part of this rant, and this is why I think you guys are so, what you're doing is so friggin' important, is it's not just a problem for Apple that only one person works in the store. It's a problem for the city that 200 people are now traveling into Santa Monica and out of Santa Monica every single day, putting a burden on the entire traffic and transport infrastructure.
You can't be more right. I mean, the fact I think that you describe the city as a living organism is such a good metaphor. And the fact that an organism, a living organism, has all those parts, all those body parts that has to be connected and has to talk to each other. One of the great examples that you mentioned, so the city is a living organism that's constantly changing, and our ability, and I think this is one of the most of the key points of what we're trying to do, is to help cities and companies understand how one pieces of data or one data set have a whole impact of a whole different thing that is not it's not something that you would constantly think of when you think about this data set. So for instance, the ability to predict parking issues in one area of the city according to data set that's related to public events that happens in this certain geographical location is a huge has the potential of making this huge impact on parking issues. And for instance, public events or a road closure has this huge impact on the flow of traffic, both of scooters, both of Lifts, and basically all the transportation methods in the city. So the ability to cross those different data sets, different information basically, in order to make better informed decision, both on the city level but also on the resident and the company's level, is critical.
Yeah, because you help your residents be aware. Data becomes a force for good.
Exactly.
You help them if we suddenly find, and it's everything.
And this is where you become smart.
Look, you know what? The stupid thing is, like, the city know where all the burglary data is here, where, like, how many houses are being broken into at whatever time. Like, the police have got access to it, and it's public data, but I have no idea. And like, we can go to the extreme stuff, such as either on one side of it, which is on the traffic, or on the other side of it, which are pedophiles or people that you don't want near your kids. But everything in between is relevant. And actually, to be able to get access to any single thing that impacts our existence within a city, you guys are a pure B2B play, and I know that. But I actually see this, and I'm sure in the beginning Google was a B2B play, right? But now now I see in the future you guys becoming a B2C play, whereby lots of people will just want access to the data that you're able to pull together. And this is really a race for space. That's all it is. Like, whoever gets there, whoever builds the data sets in every single city in the US and every single city in the world, they control everything.
It's completely right. And I think that one of the craziest things is that the data is out there. So the data is already been acquired by all those cities all over the place. But it's so unstructured that makes it essentially unusable. But the hard work of collecting, of acquiring the data, is being constantly done by all those different cities. So the opportunity to use this data and capitalize on it creates this mega opportunity.
So, Cfir, you're the beautiful mind leading the development team behind this. What talk to me about the complexity and the difficulty for you. I know you're making it incredibly simple for people to get access to this data. And the companies that have started using you already, because you already baited this over in Israel and the folks loved you, and now you've brought it over here, and even the city officials I introduced you to absolutely adored what you're pulling together. So you make it simple for them. But talk to me about the complexity of actually doing this. How hard is this?
So actually, it's very interesting. I was surprised first to discover how huge are the differences between the way that each municipality, even though they collect the data, they collect it in a different way. And the amount of effort and algorithm power that you need to invest in it to be able to standardize it and understand the coherent building blocks that exist behind this each data vertical, it's a very difficult task. Using
Which is
many,
awesome. It means
which is
nobody else
awesome.
can
It's
do
amazing.
it.
It's fun. We like to climb to the top of the mountain, and I think it's really beautiful what we can do once we implement the most advanced NLP algorithms on top of this data and making a sense out of it.
Amazing, and it's true. You want to be a great mountain climber, so you can get up that mountain, and that's what differentiates. This is why other people have not had the opportunity to be able to achieve what you guys have done so far, because it's incredibly hard, and you need some of the greatest data scientists in the world to be able to do it, which you guys obviously have. And now, anybody listening can tell why we invested in a Heartbeat and how excited I am for how amazing that this team is going to be and where the company is going to go in the future. Talk a little bit about where that vision goes to, maybe some stepping stones for investors, other investors who are listening in, who are thinking, okay, great, I get it, Brian, I get it. Like, they're going to build the entire data. It's going to be the matrix for the entire world. It's going to be Google. It's going to have every piece of data everywhere. But how long does that take, and where does it start, and what are the stepping stones to get there? And what type of investment will you need? I don't think you need to say what it's going to be worth, because everybody knows you create the Google for data, you're $1 trillion company. Like, that's all there is to it. But what do we need between now, which is October 2019, through to 2020 and 2021? And what are we going to see on the other side based on what you get?
Yeah, okay, perfect. So the roadmap that we are building our product and service upon has, I would say, two main parts. The first one, so we obviously the first thing that we've done was going to talk to customers, to municipalities, to better understand how they encapsulate this data problem that they have. And you can see that municipalities are not in a position of even trying to like in the beginning of grasping how much value their data possesses. So one of the things that were really interesting for us when we researched the US market was that we saw that many of the tier one cities, so the big cities like San Francisco, LA, New York, Austin, etc., already have this basic infrastructure of what's called open data in place, where we can already go access the data and start generating value for our customers, for our initial customers, the companies, on basically day one. So the first part of the roadmap that we're building is taking advantage of those open data projects. So basically open data projects and all other open source data, open data sources that are out there, in order to map the urban data landscape and start generating value for companies in day one. So this is something that we already started with a few companies that we were working with back home in Israel, a few companies that we are in touch with here in the US currently. And this is just the first step. So, right, mapping this big opportunity of standardizing the open data that is out there is the first step, or basically the foot in the door, to prove municipalities that are saying constantly all over the world the data that we put out there is not usable. So companies, people that needs to use the data are not really using it because it's super unstructured, and it's really difficult to have this standardizing process by yourself for each and every company. So the first step is proving municipality, yet look, once we took your data, the open data that you are saying that no one is actually using currently, putting it under our standardization funnel, this magical black box we're calling Urbanico, suddenly you can see innovation comes to your city. Suddenly you can see all those developers, all those companies that are providing services to your residents. And this is essentially what smart city is all about. So the definition of smart city is a city that uses data, connected devices, and technology in order to provide innovative services to their residents. Since municipalities understand that they don't have the capability of building this super wide array of services in-house, their only way of serving those innovative services to the residents is by attracting private companies, attracting external developers to come and launch their services within the city. So once we're proving to the cities, look, we help you using your most valuable asset, which is the data, in order to provide innovative services to your residents and become truly smart. Now this is our foot in the door of getting access to all those million other data points that are sitting within the municipalities, waiting for people to make use of them. And this is where where this thing is gonna blow up and basically use any company in the world.
And how do you see that from a time period perspective? So how much are we going to raise? I know you're not in a crazy raise right now. You guys are good for money. You will take in some bridge money. But when we get to Q1, Q2, I think we're going to be looking for a pretty strong Series A raise.
Yeah.
Because you're building Google for data.
Yeah. So obviously, once you're having this big ambitious companies or big ambitious visions that you're trying to build, then obviously the resources that you need are correlate, I would say, in a big way. So currently we're raising
I kind of see you as you know the way you see those like white vans in Guatemala where with 14 guys in the vans with like headphones on and they're outside the embassy
working from the van.
No, I see you as like 300 hardcore amazing data scientists who are all working together with the monk on top of them and driving like the direction of where they go and then building this matrix of data all over the world. So when you build that, we're going to need a couple of million, I'm guessing, at the beginning of next year. And then how soon, just if you think timeline-wise, do you see the cities coming on board? And maybe this is even for you to answer, Cfir, as well. And also, what percentage of data per city so the investors can see, like, what is that speed of growth and what's the direction of it?
Yeah, so just to refer to your question, so currently we're raising $1 million as a small seed round, pre-seed round, I would say.
Perfect.
Just like you mentioned, as a bridge to a much larger Series A that we're planning next year. Obviously, I think that the Series A that we're raising will be of at least 10 million.
Yeah, has to be.
To be able to actually acquire all those super data scientists back home from Israel and probably quite a few over here in the States as well. The process of getting of acquiring the data is a process that it takes time, but this is why we need the amount of money to have all those, salespeople running around and convincing cities about this huge vision that we're building. Cities is like every B2G sales cycle is not the shortest sales cycle, but what we saw from cities is that they're super willing of actually providing this type of data.
They want it,
right?
they need it, they desperately need it. And what's beautiful as well about the types of money you're talking about raising is there's two types of unicorns for me. There's a type of unicorn that just spends money, and you've no idea how they're ever going to make money in the future, like AKA Bird, right? Or WeWork, both are cool, right? And then you also get Google on the other side of the spectrum. And Google it's going to take us a little bit of money to build what we have to build because we're connecting the entire damn universe, so give us a break. But as soon as we connect the universe, every single person on the planet is going to want access to that data in some way. So we invest the money in right now, but actually it doesn't matter what we invest in right now because we just became Google or Amazon. So where you're coming to in the future is this beautiful place of a company that is a highly profitable company because you already control the resources that everybody needs.
I think it's reasonable to say that until the beginning of 2020, we will be able to provide the vast amount of data that already exists in the open data projects, which is still only a few % from the whole potential that exists inside the municipalities.
Yeah.
And I think in 21.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna
Really, it's
grow
going to
really,
be
really
awesome. It's
fast.
so exciting what you're building. And I also love the way you're building it. Rather than saying, well, we're just going to build lots of bits of data which are random and in different areas, you're saying we're going to follow what people want and what they need today. So you took your customers over in Israel and you said, what data do you need? And that's going to be the basis of our data sets. You're now speaking to some of the largest companies in the logistics space in the entire country here in the United States and are directing which way that their data is going to be used as well. And we're just going to catapult out from there until we have what everybody needs now and how.
Yeah,
Friggin' A.
I think we also, a lot of mistake that a lot of startups doing is building technology just because it's amazing.
Yeah.
And we are really driven by the customer needs and trying to grow with that.
Yeah, I love it.
I think, yeah, just to elaborate on this, one of the most important thing for us in the early days was getting the strongest validation that we could. So obviously we went to the, top rated companies to get their perception of how important is what we're doing, how important it is for them, how much they would be willing to pay for it. And just have this strong validation with the top companies to make sure that we're on the right track and constantly tracking that we're on the right track.
Amazing. So investors listening, you want to get into the data for Google early, right here at Expert Dojo. And I want to, how can all of those investors contact you? And by the way, there's two types of investors, and I absolutely recognize this here because I'm in the former camp. You have the types of investors who really understand how data works. Well, actually, I'll say the ones who don't understand how data works, and then the ones who really understand how data works, right? So for those who do not understand how data works, I would humbly not even pretend to understand 1% of what Cfir is building and what Urbanico are actually putting together. But I recognize brilliance and I recognize opportunity and I recognize market gaps. So we jumped in for those three reasons, and they've not let us down. They've gone faster than we could possibly have imagined. Now we have the second type of investor, and those folks who really understand data. I don't think it matters which of you it is. You want to sit down and have meetings here because you've got real change coming your way and there's phenomenal opportunity. So for investors, how should they contact you both? And then I also want to finish up with, from yourself, if there's anything that we've missed, if there's anything really important that you want to get out there, whether it be partners that you want to make sure that you align with, whether it be corporations that you want to make sure contact you, just finishes with a message. So firstly, to the investors, how can they contact you? And then let's fill in the gaps.
So perfect. Of course, everyone that would love to talk to anyone that's interested and want to hear more about what we're building. And because we have those difficult Israeli names, I'll try to spell it. You can find us, you can contact us via email on my personal email, which is Yuval at urbanico.io. Yuval is Yuval at Urbanico, just like it sounds, .io. And Cfir mail is also, Cfir is I would say, kind of a more difficult name to pronounce.
It's pretty easy when you get the hang of it. It's just a C, and there's an F, and there's an I, and there's an R.
C like a Charlie, F like a father, I like an Indian, R like a Romeo.
Listen, if an ignorant Paddy like me can work it out, these guys can work it out, right?
Yeah. So it's also Cfir, CFIR at urbanico.io. Of course, you can visit our website, which is urbanico.io. Feel free, and would love to talk to each and every one of you. As for your second question, so other than investors, we would be super interested in talking to companies, large companies that works in the smart city space. So obviously telco companies, we're already in touch with a few of the giant, those giant telco companies that works here in the States and in other parts of the world as well. System integrators and people that are in this business of smart city and data would be super relevant for us.
And also cities, right?
Yeah.
Because look, city managers, mayors, right now you're in, I don't want to say you don't realize it, because I think you actually do realize it. The world is changing for you more than it ever has before. And with the generations coming in, they're expecting this type of access, and they're expecting you have to have the knowledge that can make cities safer, better, faster, and logistically more efficient. Data is the most direct route to be able to do this. So whether it is that you want to transform your city into what it should look like in 100 years' time and do it in the next 5 or 6 years, or whether it is you just want to understand the magnitude of the problem and the opportunity, you need to be reaching out. And the guys here would be very happy to help you with that education of where it goes to in the future, right?
It's completely true, completely true. And one add-on that I wanted to add is, so obviously we talked about investors, about potential partners, and the works in the space, about municipalities and cities. And last but definitely not least, we want to mention our customers. So companies that works in the urban area. It doesn't matter if you're a retail company trying to figure out where you want to locate your next 100 branches, whether you're a real estate developer, that want to better understand how to manage your projects and how to pick those perfect locations. If you're a public safety company trying to help make our streets safer and more secured, please contact us. Mobility-oriented company, transportation. We would love to get your requirements and start working to provide you with the data that you need in the widest coverage that's possible today.
Beautiful. Well, I can tell you, folks over here at Expert Dojo, led by me, could not be more pleased that we invested $100,000 into this company, because they are frigging awesome. Anybody else who wants to get engaged, if for any reason you want to reach out to me, of course, you always know it's brian@expertdojo.com, and I can connect you with the guys. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the future. We're going to change the world together. I love having you guys on board.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much. It's been incredible so far, and it's just the beginning.
And that's a wrap.
Thanks for joining us. If you love the podcast, please empower your circle by sharing these stories. The Art of Startup War is brought to you by Expert Dojo. And remember, we invest in startups, $50,000 checks. Make sure you apply on our site if you are one of those great entrepreneurs looking to bring your company to the next level. As far as the Art of Startup War is concerned, we are back every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. So remember, check out the new episodes. If you want to find out what the investors think, check out season 1 or 2. But make sure you join us every single week.